India and Armenia share very close relationship. With me is the Foreign Minister of Armenia here in Delhi. He held talks with the Indian External Affairs Minister. So welcome to WION. And my first question to you is, how do you characterize the India-Armenia relationship? What are the areas of cooperation you see between the two countries?
Well, thank you for the invitation. Speaking about the relations between Armenia and India, one should remember that these relations between the peoples of India and Armenia date, they have history of several centuries. I remember in 18th century there was a vibrant Armenian community in India. A community of intellectuals, of traders, who were both helping for global positioning of the India in terms of trade and economy, but also they have a huge contribution into cultural prosperity, both again of Armenia and India. It is interesting to note that, for instance, the first ever Armenian attempt to have a constitution, a written constitution of future Armenian Republic was made in India. It was written in India. Also, the first ever Armenian published periodical was published in India, as there are in Madras, nowadays Chennai. So, coming back to the modern day history, India was among the first states recognizing the independence of Republic of Armenia back in 1991. And interestingly, only 4 years later, we succeeded to sign a treaty about friendship and cooperation between our two states, quite a serious document. And now, since then, the political dialogue, but also the interaction in various fields has been developing, and especially in the recent 3-4 days, we have made significant upgrade of relations. We have very intense mutual political visits, political consultations between our foreign affairs ministries, including the ministers, I mean. Also, we constantly meet in frames of intergovernmental commission on cooperation, where we do mark the areas and specific steps that we can bilaterally implement. So if you ask how I would describe the relations, these are very close and friendly relations which are being developed still.
Let me just talk about the meeting you had here in Delhi. We saw the meeting between you and the Indian External Affairs Minister, Dr. S. Jaishankar. In fact, he referred to the newspaper being published here in India, the Armenian newspaper. But what were the conversations like? What were the key outcomes of the conversations and key outcome of your visit here in Delhi?
Well, first of all, we had the opportunity to evaluate what already has been done, how the previous agreements that we have had have been implemented, but also to talk about the future possible and potential projects and areas of cooperation.
So let's talk about the defense relationship. This is a relationship that has been growing. You got systems from India as well in past few years, something that has been talked about. So if you can perhaps talk about this relationship, how you basically are increasing your defense cooperation with India, and obviously the reports which suggest that you imported the Indian defense equipments as well. So if you can perhaps talk about, give a broader overview about this.
Sure. Well, obviously, defense is one of the directions, one of the areas where we have very close cooperation with India. And I suppose this cooperation will continuously being deepened. But what I would like to mention here is that this cooperation, and specifically trade of some specific equipment made in India, by Armenia is not intended to be used or however in any other sense is not against any other third party. You have probably you probably are aware that Armenia has the peace agenda. We are engaged in peace negotiations with our eastern neighbor, but also in general, we very much are focused on establishing peace and stability and normalizing our relations with our neighbors. So we are in the middle of the process of reforming our defense sector, reforming our army, modernizing our army. And here the Indian experience in some specific areas, as well as the equipment made in India, are of interest to us. But again, this is for reforming the Armenian defense system, and there is no intention to use these systems against any other third party.
I was coming to that point. We have seen comments coming from Azerbaijan in the aftermath of the reports coming that you have imported the India-made defense assets, especially Pinaka. So if you can perhaps talk about the reaction coming from Azerbaijan?
Well, I basically already reflected on this topic, and Armenia's intention is only modernizing its own defense capabilities, modernizing the defense system as a whole. And here the equipment brought not only from India, but also elsewhere as well, has the intention of this of being part of a better army with better defensive capabilities. Armenia does not have any intention of aggression against any third country.
Connectivity. This has been another key pillar of the relationship. I've heard your previous comments. You have mentioned about Chahabar port. Now, how do you plan to use the Chahabar port for wider connectivity when it comes to the world and to India?
Well, as any other country in the world, nowadays Armenia is doing its best to have or promote its logistical routes to become part of global transit routes, and here exploring new opportunities is very important for Armenia. Moreover, we have come up with our own initiative, the Crossroads of Peace, which basically supposes to unblock all transport and transit infrastructure. We in the South Caucasus, first of all, but also the initiative goes beyond the South Caucasus, especially having in mind that if implemented, this project will have positive influence not only on the three countries of South Caucasus. So we are interested in exploring new transit routes, including ports, including railway, including electricity cables, internet cables, etc. And to implement this, we of course first of all focus on the negotiations with our neighbors. Azerbaijan. We made beneficially, we believe, a mutually beneficial proposal for both countries, but also we continue our negotiations about opening our borders and relaunching our railway infrastructure, connecting Armenia with Turkey. So, as part of the Crossroads of the Crossroads of Peace, we can consider not only the north-south direction, but also west to east, or as you wish, east to west directions. Again, if implemented, this project is going to be beneficial for many players in the world.
Trade, it remains small overall if you look at it, and essentially the ideas which the Armenian side might have to increase trade with India, if you can perhaps talk about it, and where the Chabar port lies in terms of your engagement with India to increase the trade.
If you look at the economic aspect of our relations, indeed, I would agree that there is a huge untapped potential here. Our cooperation in other sectors is much ahead, and we should implement and make additional efforts also to ensure that the economic potential and trade potential is being realized more properly. And here again, we should speak about logistics, about the geographical distance, but we also know that there is still homework to be done. For instance, I remember during my first visit to India back in 2022, I brought a large group of Armenian businessmen who were interested in making business with their Indian counterparts. Today, with Minister Jaishankar, we had the opportunity to discuss a necessity and an opportunity of bringing a group of Indian businessmen to Armenia. And I believe this should be a process, an exercise that should be repeated from time to time to renew or to help the businessmen to establish new ties, new contacts. But also we can understand, we can agree that there are areas where the geographical distance does not play that big role. For instance, information technologies, high technologies, artificial intelligence, in which both Armenia and I'm sure, and I see that India is very much interested, but not only interested, we both have huge capacities and capabilities here. We have the experts, we have the potential, both of us, I mean. So we can collaborate here as well. And if we dig further, we can obviously and certainly find new areas where we can help to increase the numbers. For instance, I can bring another example, the direct flights between us. And there are certain Armenian carriers who are interested in opening and establishing direct flights. And I know that there is a conversation among Indian carriers as well. And if there is a direct flight, we understand that this will come to help not only to improve people-to-people contacts, not only to improve cultural ties, but this is also tourism, which is a sector of economy. It also brings money to both, to the visitors and also the host country.
You talked about the people-to-people relationship. Now, the bedrock of any relationship is strong people-to-people relationship, and for that, tourism and students do matter in this relationship. You have many Indian tourists. The EM also mentioned and thanked you for making sure that the Indian students are safe and secure in Armenia. So, how are you pitching Armenia as a tourist destination and a destination for Indian students?
This is a very good example, by the way. We have had Indian students who study mainly in medicine, but it's not restricted only to medicine. It's already more than a decade, a couple of decades, but we see that the interest is growing. And we are very much interested in keeping, having and getting the students from India. But also, I assure you that in India as well, there are universities and there are specialties in which students from Armenia can be interested. So most probably we should multiply our efforts in this area. But I would like to add another layer to this, another nuance to this conversation. Armenia is launching a large-scale project, the establishment of academic city, where we want not only to combine several Armenian universities and respective institutions, but also to invite some new reputable institutions to play a role here. And I believe that this will attract more students from India. But if we continue speaking about some influx you mentioned students. I would like to add another group, influx coming from India to Armenia. There is another area where during recent couple of years we have noticed some changes. We see that there is some labor migration from India to Armenia as well. We haven't had this experience years
Are you pointing
ago.
to illegal migration?
Yes,
Or
no, legal,
migration.
completely
Okay.
legal. And we see that there is a demand in Armenia, but also this is an area which should be regulated. And today we had the opportunity to exchange views on this with Minister Jaishankar as well.
Are you basically saying that you want more Indians to come to Armenia, the skilled Indians, to help your economy? Are you saying that?
I would put it in another way. We are okay with involving a labor force from India, but this should be at an extent which can be okay for the Armenian economy and the workforce in Armenia as well. So there is a demand, but we should regulate. By the way, regulate not only the regulation. The aim of regulation is not only to regulate the amount of the workforce, which can be transferred from a country to country, but also to make sure that all the rights of the labor migrants are secured.
Let's now go to international domain and let's talk about how both countries are working together internationally. How do you see India's support to Armenia when you were facing a lot of issues with your neighbors, especially Azerbaijan? So how would you see India's support and India's role in the South Caucasus?
When we speak about cooperation between Armenia and India on international fora, I would say that here we have very close cooperation. We support each other's candidacies. We very often and very frequently support each other's initiatives on various international platforms. As for the normalization process between Armenia and Azerbaijan, there I should say that we are very close. I mean, Armenia and Azerbaijan are very close to finalization of the draft of peace agreement between the two countries. And if we succeed to first of all, finalize the drafting and then sign the peace treaty, that would be one of the strongest pillars of the peace and stability in South Caucasus. And this comes to also to complement some other tracks and negotiations and agreements that we already had with Azerbaijan. For instance, we just several months ago we succeeded to sign and then ratify a regulation of the works of border commissions working on the delimitation of the border between two states. I already had the opportunity to mention the proposal regarding the unblocking of transport infrastructure in the region. And also I can add our proposal to Azerbaijan, proposal regarding the joint and mutual arms control and verification mechanisms. So all these tools can help us to establish long-lasting peace in our region. All the countries that can have a positive role welcoming the constructive steps of the two parties, two countries, are only very welcome in our region. On the other hand, of course, I should also note that the agreements that we have already accomplished with Azerbaijan, they have been accomplished through bilateral direct negotiations, hopefully we will get there soon.
Optimistic note, but let's come to the Indian subcontinent. Now, in the Indian subcontinent, one of the biggest worry for India has been the cross-border terrorism coming from Pakistan. What do you have to say about that? Even as Pakistan continues to occupy an area, the Pakistan occupied Kashmir. So, what is your stance, if you can perhaps talk about it?
Well, Armenia's position is very well known, and it hasn't changed over the years. We support India's position and perception here on the issue of Jammu and Kashmir, and we would only welcome any positive, any peaceful progress here.
But on the issue of cross-borderism, what do you have to say on that? Because that's a big issue for India. That's a big worry. Terrorism is something that India has been very vocal about, and especially cooperating with countries when it comes to counterterrorism.
Well, Armenia condemns terrorism in all its forms and in all the corners of our planet, and we ourselves have very sad experience of involvement of mercenary terrorist fighters in the conflicts in our region. So, as I said, we condemn terrorism, and also we see that terrorism can have even worse influence over the regional processes if supported and in cooperation with some states.
You mentioned about mercenary terrorists. Can you perhaps elaborate on that bit?
I already said that we had bad and sad experience of seeing mercenary terrorist fighters involved in the conflicts in our region.
Let's talk about multilateral groupings, the United Nations. India has been calling for reforms of the United Nations Security Council. What's your sense like? Do you support India's bid for the UNSC and also BRICS? That has been an emerging grouping. You have been an observer member in several of those meetings. What's your assessment about the BRICS? Would you like to be a member of the BRICS, or how do you see this grouping as?
Well, we see these days, unfortunately, that all the mechanisms existing in the United Nations organization structure, and also all the others even existing, beyond the UN structures, are not sufficient and are not guaranteeing us and helping us to prevent or manage or stop the conflicts going on here and there, everywhere on the earth. So it is becoming more and more obvious that most probably the United Nations system needs some reforms. And we know the attitude and approach of India, and we support this attitude publicly.
And BRICS?
Yeah, well, we have been participating in the works of BRICS as well as Shanghai Cooperation Organization. You ask for BRICS, and we will remain interested in being an observer in this organization and seeing what this cooperation, this format can bring to our region as well.
Perhaps your views about your normalization of relationship with Turkey, if you can perhaps talk about it, and relationship with Iran, which is quite good, but generally for our viewers, if you can give a broader picture of the relationship with Iran, as well, because for India as well, Iran is a close neighbor, so there are overlaps. There is a trilateral as well, which has been working very well. So if you can talk about these two aspects.
Well, Armenia has four neighbors. The eastern neighbor is Azerbaijan, with whom we are trying to establish peace and interstate relations, closing the page of the enmity in the region. Our western neighbor is Turkey, with whom Armenia's borders have been closed for more than 3 decades. Now we have quite a dynamic dialogue with Turkey, and this dialogue is aimed at establishing diplomatic relations between us and Turkey, and also opening the borders between two countries. So far, we have succeeded to have several small but still tangible steps. Some of agreements have not been implemented, like we have already agreed that the border should be open first for third country nationals and also Armenian and Turkish nationals, diplomatic passport holders. So this one, the latter, has not been implemented yet, but we continue our dialogue. And again, if the relations are fully normalized, that would be very beneficial not only for the two countries, but several other players in the region and beyond the region as well. Now, as for the other two neighbors of ours, our northern neighbor Georgia and southern neighbor Iran, we have very good relations with these two countries for quite a long time. And we are focused on deepening these ties. And we understand you ask specifically about Iran because geographically, when we look at India and Armenia, and we have the intention to deepen the ties, of course, we should also pay attention to the countries which are between us, and this is obviously Iran. We are very much interested in deepening our cooperation, including in trilateral format, which you mentioned.
And how do you assess the global situation currently? There are two conflicts which are underway, but looking at a kind of a ceasefire, we have Trump administration as well. In Ukraine, it looks like we could have peace very soon. Same goes for West Asia. So what is the Armenian foreign policy all about these big issues? Because this is something that has been shaking the world for last few years.
Well, as you can conclude from everything which I have said before this question, Armenia is very much focused on peace building. Of course, peace building, first of all, for Armenia, for South Caucasus, for our neighbors, but also we think that peace is the only solution for all the other countries in the world as well. And here I would like to separate and focus on two separate dimensions. First of all, the humanitarian dimension. I mean, sufferings of human beings, be it in Armenia, be it in Ukraine, be it in Syria, wherever you want, you can mention, is unacceptable. Gross violations of human rights, be it, anywhere in the world, are unacceptable. The mankind, we live in 21st century, and unfortunately we continuously see how people are subjected to massacres, for instance, or how families see the deaths of their family members because of conflicts is odd. I hope you agree. And then the second layer, for Armenia, for the interests of Armenia, we are very much interested in peace in Ukraine, in Syria, in Middle East. Peace is the only way which can allow nations to continue cooperation, to deepen their collaboration, to trade with each other, and to benefit from each other.
So there are several things which, of course, can impact the global discourse. But on that note, thank you so much, sir, for speaking to WION.
Thank you very much.